It's me, God's Comic. This is Brad Stine, and this is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. It is the greatest podcast in human history. That's why it's only watched by an elite few, because it's so expensive to watch this. We don't charge you anything. I'm just saying that it's expensive mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. My name is God's Comic Brad Stine, a name given me by the New Yorker magazine in 2004. And if you are new to the podcast, you're going to hear a mysterious voice from the Netherlands. That's my son, Wyatt Leroy Stine, who wouldn't be here had he not exuded from my loins. Wyatt, how are you, son?
Doing great.
We have a very, very special guest tonight. John Rich, the amazing Big and Rich singer and winner of a Celebrity Apprentice, who has Donald Trump on his cell phone. But he'll be on tonight, and it's going to be an amazing interview, and you guys are going to love it. New music, new songs, and all types of new ways of seeing the earth. If you know, this man is a full-blown, committed, Christ-following conservative, and he don't mince words, and he is our special guest tonight. Today was a day of spiritual, supernatural powers coming together and convening.
You're talking about that eclipse, I think, huh?
Oh, my Lord, have mercy. It was a spectacular. I could barely, it just brought me to tears, Wyatt. I would look at it, and people would say, don't. They say, don't look at it, you're going to burn your eye.
What do they know?
Yes, and they're always talking about that. And you know what? Have you ever noticed that they always want to ruin your fun? And I don't know if that everybody does this, but I did. I wanted to see what kind of shapes it would create. I saw a dog, it was a poodle, and I did see a dragon, and I think an alligator. I did not need special glasses. I don't know what that hype was all about.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Honestly, I think those clouds were the glasses I needed.
I know. Well, anyways, I don't know about you guys. I don't know where you were located, but all we got was a big old batch of clouds. So it was kind of counter climactic, I guess is the word. I found it interesting, though, how many people were frightened by it. They were thinking that this is going to be the end of the earth, that Jesus is coming back, and we're all going to go fly in the air. That didn't happen. Dang it. Because, Wyatt, I got to be honest with you. If I went flying in the air, that'd be amazing. I think it's time to bring on our guest. This has been an incredible interview. We did it, I think, a couple weeks ago. And John came in. He lives in town. He's got this amazing house that I haven't been to yet, but it's crazy. I've heard a lot about it. But he came in to talk about what he was up to, what he believes in, and who we are. And that with this being an election year, we don't know how this is all going to pan out, or if we will ever be able to see a swinging back of the pendulum into some sort of sanity and clarity on this nation. We don't know. But there are people out there fighting for it and really ready to give their money and their time and their sacred honor, just like the originals. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So I think you're going to enjoy it. Nah, I don't think you're going to enjoy it. I know you're going to, because John's amazing. We've had him before, and he was one of our most enjoyed guests, so you're going to enjoy him again. Wyatt, you got anything to say before we head on to John?
Nah, let's just get into it.
Folks, enjoy this amazing interview with the old second half of Big and Rich, known as John Rich.
Good to be with you, buddy.
Thank you for coming back and lowering yourself.
Oh, man. Well, congratulations. That's a big jump, man. Salem Networks is great.
It is. I got about 2 or 3 topics I really wanted to focus on with you, because you have such an eclectic career in life. You're kind of like me, and what I mean by that is you started out very blue collar, very middle America. You had no ego about who you were. You were just grateful for what your gift was and what you loved doing. But you lived in a nation that gave you an opportunity to leverage something you're really good at and actually make a living doing that. And that was called the American dream. Now, I think that's on the downslide. Hopefully guys like us can fight for that. We're certainly not going to let it go without a fight. But becoming a professional singer, songwriter, in Nashville, for Lord have mercy, I cannot, the talent of the people in this town is so absurd that I can't even imagine you'd have the courage to walk into this town with a guitar and say, oh, I'm a guitar player. It's like, are you? Get in line.
Yeah, right.
So tell me about What is it like as a guy who's launching into this game and you come into big leagues, baby? How does one even navigate this? What does it take to overcome all that competition and naysayers who do not want you taking their gigs?
So there's a few answers to that. Number one, I think a mistake a lot of people make, no matter if it's a music industry or whatever industry they're trying to get into, you're in comedy, is to don't be disillusioned about yourself that you're great. Now, you may have great potential, but you're probably not great when you walk in the door. And so that's the first thing, is understand that you're not there yet. Number two is something I've always done, and even do to this day, is I search out people who have had maximum success at the thing I would like to do. I search them out and I say, hey, could I sit down with you for an hour or two and ask you questions and lean in on your advice, and let me tell you what I'm trying to do. And in the songwriting aspect of that, I was about 20, 21 when Lonestar got a record deal. And the first thing you got back then when you got a record deal, probably the same thing now, except they chew up more of what you own, is you get a publishing deal. So you get a songwriter deal because now you have a record deal, and if you can write some songs that go on the record, the publishing company is going to make money on that. So I told the publisher, I said, how many times can I write in a month? They said, as many times as you want. I said, 20? They said, 30, whatever you want. I said, okay, I'd like to write 5 days a week.
Okay.
They said, really? I said, anybody you want to connect me with. So what they did is they started putting me in rooms with the top tier songwriters because they're trying to get a cut on this new Lonestar record. So I got the benefit of sitting in the room with Mark D. Sanders and Don Cook and Sharon Vaughn and, you know, all these massive, great songwriters who were 100 times better than me, and watch them craft this song, watch them how to set you up and knock you down with a hook. And so I would always show up prepared, though. I'd have one big thing about writing songs is never, if you got any songwriters out there watching this, listen to what I'm saying. If you ever get an opportunity to sit in a room with a writer who outranks you, do not walk in that room without at least 20 or 30 ideas. Because they've got their own ideas.
Yeah.
They don't want to waste their idea on some greenhorn songwriter.
So you're talking about if they're if you want to go
if you're going to co-write with somebody, right?
They don't want to do all the work. It's like, what do you got?
Oh, it's very disrespectful because I've had writers do that to me now that I've hit some pretty high marks as a writer. Somebody will say, would you write with this new artist or whatever? And they'll come in and I'll say, well, what do you want to write about? And they go, well, I don't know. What ideas do you have? I go, next.
I don't need
next,
you, man.
Out of here. Exactly. Why am I going to give you my best ideas?
I've already got it down. I thought you wanted me to enhance your thoughts.
So I would show up with notebooks full of half-written songs, all kinds of hooks, melodies, guitar licks, whatever. And I'd just keep shoveling them out there until that bigger writer would say, hey, that was actually a good hook. Let's work on that one. And so that got me in the door with these big-time songwriters, and then I continued to write. So in my career, I've written over 2,000 songs now.
Wow.
So there's a lot that goes into that. It is a rank, you know, in the world of creativity. You need to know where you rank. If you're a private and you're writing with a general, know that he's the general or she's the general, and salute them and bring everything you got to the table.
But I think there's a difference between a performer, an artist who makes a living at it, and someone who does that behind the scenes writing. Because I think historically, there wasn't singer-songwriters, right? I mean, you kind of would use somebody else's songs, and you were the. I don't know if Elvis Presley ever wrote a song in his life.
No, I think back then, there was writers and then there were singers. There were a few.
Buddy Holly was different. He was one of the guys that
there
broke that mold. But
there was a few that did it, but you're right. Mainly, they were singers and there were songwriters. Frank Sinatra didn't write songs.
No.
Dean Martin didn't write songs.
Right.
Johnny Cash did, though.
Yeah.
He wrote all his songs except for a couple of the last ones that he did. But that's a real thing. So is performing, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also a rank in that. You know, if you're just starting out, maybe go watch some big concerts and see if you can get backstage and sit on the bus with somebody who's done it for a long time and ask them, how do you hold a crowd? How do you talk? How do you build a set list? You know, all that. So how do you run your business? That's the other part. The music business.
Well,
you have to learn the business side of it if you want to do it for a long time.
If you and stay and survive by making some money, because you're going to kind of be on your own. A lot of times, maybe a manager will come into the game and help you and navigate that because that's their thing.
Right.
But you got to trust them. And we just talked about Elvis. I would say a lot of folks would evaluate Colonel Parker and go, "This dude was not really the greatest man." You know, he was he made some decisions for him that I don't think necessarily furthered his career in some of the movies he made him do. It was all about making dough. It was very short term.
But that's on Elvis.
Yeah, maybe.
No, it is.
But he was loyal.
That's another thing I tell artists. Well, that's also a problem. You know, don't be loyal to people who are out to destroy you.
But but how do you know if you trust a guy and he's gotten you to a certain level? When do you suddenly see something's wrong?
I have an answer for that. You know, because I've been to those points with managers that have redlined me and continue to redline. And that is when you personally know you've hit the red line personally, whether it's your voice, your mind, physically, whatever it is, relationships, your life in general. When you feel like you're at that point and they keep pushing, that's when the manager works for the artist.
Yeah.
It's not they're not your boss. You're their boss.
Yeah.
They take a piece of what you make. You turn to that manager and go, no.
Yeah.
No is a complete sentence. It's also the hardest thing for any artist to ever say.
Right.
Because we came from nothing. And so it was always yes, yes, yes. Whatever the opportunity was, yes, I'll do that, because you're trying to make it. You're trying to be somebody. But at some point, that can turn around and eat you. I call it being a victim of your own success. There's a lot of victims of their own success out there that never stood up and said, you know what? No, I'm not doing it.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about an artist is, for the most part, they are insecure. There's something about, and I'm not saying that, I don't know your backdrop or story, but I think that for a lot of us who felt less than, and we tried to find, how do we overcome this part of ourselves, and we find a creative outlet. We find, I can do this, or this is something good, and it gives you that impetus. Because one thing I do notice about this business, when it comes to record labels who want to control, and they don't have as much control now, because now you can use the internet and make your own album. That never happened. There was a time when you had no option.
That's the good side of tech.
Yeah. I can do it myself. I don't need you anymore. The idea of I mean, this is tricky, but apparently you can re-record all of your material if you don't like the way that the label is handling your material, and you say, well, it's ours. It's like, well, not now, because I'm making my own version over.
If you wait 5 years.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most contracts have a re-record after 5 years, but you can.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift did it.
Did that, but I guess what I was getting at was that, there's great managers, there's great agents, there's great label, there's people that are very good at it, and we need them. Artists are oftentimes a little scatterbrained, all we want to do is the art, and we need guys that kind of keep us on the left brain people that know how to do the bells and, the jots and tittles. We do the bells and whistles. But the truth is, I can find an accountant. I can get 100. I can find a manager. I can find somebody who just can do general business technique. I can find a road manager. I can find these guys. They can't find us. We're the commodity that cannot be bought. I cannot just decide I'm going to be a songwriter. You either are gifted with that potential or you aren't. And that's the hardest thing to find, because it's not something that you can simply buy. You have to have it. And so we are the gold in that mine.
We're the commodity that they're selling.
That they sell. And,
exactly right.
My point is, they need us. We don't need them, because there's a million of them.
Yeah.
There's not a million of us, or everybody be famous.
Right. If they could do it, they'd go do it.
Everybody would do it. Or everybody that thinks they can play GCD would be a songwriter. It isn't that easy. I don't know how they do it. I mean, to me, the easiest go-to, and I'll just date myself for songwriting, is McCartney, because he's the most successful pop writer in history. He has the most covered song in history, Yesterday. But when I finish an album and it's done, because it takes so long, I don't know how long it takes to really make a song work. I don't know if it's something that's always done behind the scenes, and you work it out, and you work out the bridge, and you work out the melody, and you play it, and you try this, and then you go into production, and you say, let's add strings, but then it's finished, and then the public either says it's good or not. Comedy has to be rehearsed in front of the people. because you can't tell if the
You
rhythms.
don't know if it's funny or not.
Yeah, well, and here's what happens.
Yeah.
Over time, you have a pretty good instinct. You've done it long enough. You can think of something that's funny. You just know, but not at first. Because when you're first starting and they're not laughing, you got to go, is it because I suck? Or is it because I don't know how to do this yet, but I know I'm good? And do you have the courage to plow through the fact that they hate you because you say, I don't care whether you laugh or not. I know how to do this. I just haven't figured it out yet. So in music, I mean, what does it still take the audience to prove the song is a hit? Because ultimately they either buy it or they don't. Mm-hmm. So have you ever written a song and said, never went as far as I wanted, but I don't care, that was a great song?
Yeah, I have those too. I have some of my favorite songs never had any big chart success. But the audience ultimately does pick the winners and losers. The issue you have is you have the industry between the creator and the audience in my world. And so the industry is a whole different animal. They pick and choose what songs the audience gets to hear. So if you turn in 11 or 12 songs, the label, it's their money, their contract, they're going to pick track 2, 4, and 7, whereas you go, I'd really like 1, 3, and 5. They go, nope, sorry, we're not putting those out.
Nobody reaches a status where they can trump them and say, nope, I'll tell you what you're going to do.
I mean, there's maybe a handful, not many. I mean, I've been at some pretty high statuses with that, selling millions and millions of records, and still could not trump the record level. But a great example of that is probably the biggest song Big and Rich ever had, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. The label, when we brought that song to Warner Brothers, they said, that's hilarious. You're not putting that on the record, right? And we said, well, yeah, we thought we would. We've been playing it down at Music Mafia. People are going crazy down there when we play it. They go, nobody's going to take you serious if you put that song on your record, guys. That is not the impression you want to make. And we were like, come on. Yeah. We kept battling and battling. They finally
thought it was like a novelty or some song as opposed.
Well, and it is. It's a hilarious, but so was Elvira.
Yeah, right.
I mean, so we kept fighting them, and they said, okay, fine, you can put it on the record. We'll just bury it in the album cuts. And so at least it's on the record. Well, we put out our first single called Wild West Show. And when that single came out, the whole record came out behind it so people could get their hands on the record. A few months into that, we started getting phone calls from the record label saying, hey, there's a station in Florida playing Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy, and the phones are blowing up. I said, yeah, well, I'm not surprised. What station is it? And it was like Fort Myers or somewhere. And then another station and another and another and another. And all these stations start playing Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. And they went, you know what? Maybe that's the second single. And so then the audience pushed that. And it became our next single. But even then, it was never a top 10 hit. Never went top 10, Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. Which is now like it plays in line with, Devil Went Down to Georgia and Sweet Home Alabama, and Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy. It's like it's a go-to party song.
Yeah, that's correct.
So the industry doesn't know that the artists, the singers, and the audience, they truly determine the course of music, in my opinion, not the industry.
Well, we can sit and talk about art and writing, and I write comedy and you write music, and they're different, but they're the same, right? It's just a particular way of communicating. But I want to take, we only have so much time, John, and, the one thing about you that I'm so grateful for is you're a warrior, is that, as much as we love this nation, we don't worship it, we worship God, but we're grateful for it, we want to defend it, we've been given this territory, why wouldn't we fight like the Israelites fought for their territory, and like any nation has fought for their own territory, and that just is kind of a no-brainer. But I want to take this a little different direction. I might not get any momentum, but I'm just curious about it. Because you seem to have, as we've talked over the years, you seem to have a spiritual insight and dimension to you. Most people probably wouldn't know. I'm sure they know you're Christian and that you are Christ follower and you're unapologetic about that. But the depth of it, you got to sit down with somebody to really go, wow, go, this is how deep you go. Because they don't know. We're a couple of just regular dudes. They don't know what really matters to us. But I don't know if this is going to make any sense, but I wanted to ask you, in the business of music, and those people who are reaching, I mean, the highest echelons, the Taylor Swifts, Beyoncé's, I don't even know who they all are. I don't follow pop music, but something has happened in that world in the way they demonstrate what they believe, or at least what they're going to put out into the atmosphere in their live concerts, that either is the biggest affectation of just trying to create an image, or it's evil. It's like demonic. And it's like, okay, is this conspiracy theory, or are we watching people
Praise the devil on a live
yes!
stage?
Seriously, though. What are you...
Hold seances on their stage.
Yes!
Yeah, man.
So you're seeing that. We're
Of
all
course.
seeing that. I know what they're saying because they did this in the 70s.
Yeah.
With whatever, Motley Crue and Black Sabbath. It's devil. Yeah, it's just because it sells albums. You put a pentagram on there and you do devil horns, and that means, dude.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are people in your industry. Maybe, I don't know about country. I don't know. I know last time we talked, you said that even that's been kind of taken over by some wokies. But do you think there is some kind of spiritual battle that has taken hold of the music industry that is beyond anything most people would even realize?
100%. So let's think about how powerful these entertainers are. They speak to more people on a daily basis than any politician, any businessman, any world leader. They speak to, Taylor Swift has 100 and something million followers on Twitter. Like, I think she's number one, 180 million. I forget the number. And then they get the biggest TV spots. They get Super Bowl halftimes. They get the Grammys. They get the CMA Awards. They get all this giant stuff. So they are the biggest communicators, biggest influencers, I would argue, that are out there. They're bigger than actors.
And probably in history. Because of the reach.
Well, now because of tech and the way you can reach everybody. Right, there's billions and billions of impressions that they're making every month. So because they have that type of influence, guess who wants to get a hold of them? The bad guys.
Right.
Yeah, because that's the greatest mouthpiece you can. And who are they basically talking to most of the time? They're not talking to guys our age. They're talking to teenagers, college-age kids. They're talking to that crew, the up-and-comers is who they're really speaking to. So, the bad guys want to get a hold of them in a big way. I've been invited to the Bohemian Grove more times than I can count.
Yeah.
More times than I can count.
What is
by
that?
Big-time country singers, by very powerful politicians. I'm talking like not just a senator, like ones that run stuff. And
what is Bohemian
business
Grove?
Guys?
I've heard about it, but it
Bohemian Grove is a big section of woods out in Northern California, outside of San Francisco. Let's just start there.
Okay,
that's where it's
located. The territory has
located.
already been established.
That's where it's located.
Demons are already there hanging out.
It's been around since the late 1800s. This is where politicians, business moguls, creative people, singers, joke tellers, actors, that whole world, all men though, no women are allowed to come to Bohemian Grove. And they all meet up out there in the summer for 2 or 3 weeks and do whatever it is they do. Most all presidents have been there, not Trump. He's never been there. That's good.
Yeah.
And I think what it really is, I've said no every single time. I said, there is no way I'm going and sitting in the woods outside of San Francisco with a bunch of elites doing Lord knows what y'all are ever doing. No, thank you.
So is it kind of secretive?
Completely, yeah.
So,
People have tried to infiltrate
they
it.
may be doing some kind of ceremony.
You can go look it up.
Yeah.
You look it up, look in the infiltration of Bohemian Grove, and you'll see the ceremanial and the rituals and stuff.
Is it kind of
doing.
satanic stuff?
Well, one thing they do is they burn a human effigy, meaning a representation of a human. They set it on fire down at the feet of this 60-foot tall stone owl out in the woods. Now you go look up what's that stone owl represent. Well, you could go different ways with that, but one interpretation is it's Moloch. And if you go look at the ancient history of that demonic god, that's similar things that they did, Baal and Moloch and all that. So I believe that Bohemian Grove really is a trap. I think it is a trap for the unsuspecting. I think they come to guys like me back when I was really hitting it hard and at the top of the heap. They want to get in influencers to come in there. Oh, you're going to love it. There's presidents and all these powerful people, and you're going to make so many connections. It's going to be great for your career. And then they get them out there, and Lord knows what happens. I don't know because I've never been there. But then that person is then implicated or in that situation. You know, bad people like to put good people in compromising situations.
Yes.
I think a lot of our politicians are bad. I think a lot of our politicians are probably good, but were put in bad situations.
Yeah.
Where they get leverage on them. They go, hey, look, here's a picture of you in a room when this was
Epstein
going on.
Island, I mean, clearly,
Well,
I
yeah.
would say a vast majority of our, including judges, compromised videos of.
There's no telling.
It has to be, because they suddenly do things that are antithetical to everything else that every other judgment. I'm talking about judges now,
Yeah.
Supreme Court judges, if you can draw a parallel. That suddenly they're doing something that was not what they normally act like, as though somebody said to them, no, here's how you're going to rule on this one. And by the way, remember this? So there's a compromise, and this is classic CIA subterfuge, compromising. Soviets have been doing it for years.
So what's the only thing that keeps somebody from taking the bait on that? Because it's a really good sales pitch on the Bohemian Grove. It's been pitched to me many times. Really strong pitch, especially if you're aspiring, you're wanting to build and get bigger in what you're
the
doing.
networking would be unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. So what's the only thing that would keep a person that's not a part of that from taking the bait and going in there? There's only one thing: discernment. That's it. You know, people say, what should I pray for? Should I pray for peace? Should I pray for this, pray for that, pray for prosperity? No. Pray for discernment. That's what I think. Numero uno.
Yeah.
And this can go all the way to those high levels we're talking about, or for people listening and watching, it can go to just your personal life. That somebody comes into your life, they got the best pitch you've ever heard. They talk like you, they walk like you, they support the things you support, and they want you to join them. They want you to be a part of this situation. At that point, you better have some discernment, because there are a lot of people that if you dig down at 2 or 3 layers, you're going to find something in there that you go, hang on, red flag, I'm throwing the flag, and step back away from that. You'd be better off to have fewer friends that were all legit than you would be to have a whole bunch of friends and a bunch of them are out to get you, or you're participating in something you don't even realize is something other than what they presented to you. Does that make sense?
Of course. Well, and
You got to be careful.
You know, I mean, I think that there is something to be said for grinding out your career. I was never a big famous guy. I had my little moments in my little subculture of Christian comedy. I was doing Promise Keepers, 10,000, 15,000 men. Now, they weren't there just for me, but I'm in front of them. I'm entertaining them. I'm getting standing ovations. So, you know, it feels like what you've experienced in your life. And I've had, obviously, folks show up and buy my albums and watch my shows and want the autographs. But I was never like a just top of the heap guy like Nate Bargatze's become, or Seinfeld, or whatever. And so I think if you hang on and you make a living doing something you love, that's kind of good enough. I mean, if that's all you get, at least I did it with my art and the thing that was inspiring to me. But I also think it gives you perspective. You don't take yourself seriously after a while, because you realize it's all BS, man. It's all just words and control, and they say what they want you to hear so that they stay in your good graces until you're no longer necessary. Then they cast you aside, and you are just a widget to them. You're just a product that comes and goes. Oh, they're not buying 8 tracks anymore. What's the next? And you're gone.
Yeah.
And so you really do need a balance, a spiritual life, to understand God, His revelation through Christ is just crucial. There has to be a return to that in this nation. It's the only shot we have. It's not going to be politicians. Because as you said, I think most of them are compromised. And speaking of politicians, we didn't talk about this the last time you were here, but this is pretty important. We are in 2024. It is a presidential election year. So of all the people I've had on, nobody has had a more personal connection to Donald Trump than you, because you were on Celebrity Apprentice.
Yep.
And you won.
Yeah.
What the heck?
And I've gotten to know him really well since then.
So I want to get into that. That's the crucial thing,
Yeah.
because you will have an insight none of us will know, and certainly not the way the press is going to caricature him or whatever. But let's start with Celebrity Apprentice. So when you first got called for that, did you know what it was? I don't remember. It was one of the first seasons.
It was Celebrity Apprentice, so this was the 4th season of that, but I'd said no season 1, 2, and 3 because I was a fan of the show. I'd watched it, and I thought, like, Clint Black had been on it. And I called Clint and I said, what are they doing to you behind the scenes? Because Clint's one of the most level-headed, positive guys you've ever met in your life. And he got totally bent out of shape on national television. And I said, what are they doing to you, man? He goes, man, don't do it. Don't do it. It's brutal. It is brutal what they put you through. Trace Atkins was like, man, I mean, I'd think about it before I... And so I was like, and knowing how hot I can run, I went, that's probably not a good situation.
So they're poking at you because they want good TV.
They wanted me
so
to
they're
be on
trying
there.
to make you go crazy.
Yeah,
so they got a good soundbite.
Season 4 rolls around, and they came at me again. And this time they flew to Nashville, came to my house, the director and producer of the show, and they said, you got to be on it. I said, I just don't want y'all to do something in an edit that makes me look like a total jerk in front of all of America. And this guy looks at me and he goes, well, if you don't give us the bullets, we can't shoot them at you. And I went... So I took that as a personal challenge. Like, can I control myself, mentally get through this thing? It's a mental game. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to play for the kids at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, who I'd been going to that hospital since the mid-'90s in Lone Star. And if I play for them, and I still know a bunch of those kids and their parents, they're the ones that are going to be watching. So if I can't keep myself under control on their behalf, then I suck at that point. So you know what? Okay, let's try it. So I got in there, and Clint was right. Trace was right. Absolutely brutal process.
How do they go about, because this probably applies to all the reality shows. So how do they try to provoke you? I remember in the MMA one, a lot of it was alcohol. Let's get people so you can liquor it up.
Yeah,
that
this
they'll
wasn't
just do
that.
crazy. But what are they doing to you?
So first day, first of all, they knock on your room at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Now you got one eye open, you know, kind of got your clothes on. And they start sticking microphones on you, and the camera's right there. Boom, right out of the gate.
So they just want to get you when you're not ready to.
You go to the first thing, and they're like, okay, everybody's putting their TV powder on or whatever they're doing. They go, hey, let's get your breakfast orders in, guys. What do you want? I go, I'll take some eggs, some sausage, give me some toast, some hash browns, all that. And you sit there for 90 minutes, and breakfast never shows up. They go, okay, guys, we're loading up in the van to go see Mr. Trump to get the task for today. And we go, hey, what about breakfast? They go, it got hung up in traffic. We'll take your lunch orders when we get there. And so then you get there and you're like, now you're starving. Okay, my lunch order, I'll take a BLT and a da-da-da-da-da.
Man!
And that doesn't show up. Now it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and nobody's eating anything. And people they start freaking out. And they're pounding you the whole time with these schedules. So after the second day of that, I realized, okay, by the way, you get back to your hotel room every night at 11 o'clock or 11:30. And then 5 o'clock in the morning, they're banging on your door again. So I did 62 out of 64 days with that schedule. I lost about 15 pounds, got sick twice. It was brutal. So the second day in, I looked out my hotel window and I saw Whole Foods there in New York City. And I was beat tired. It was 11 o'clock at night. Went over there. I bought protein bars and water and all this stuff, and I loaded it in my briefcase, and I never left that briefcase for the rest of the show. So they're all freaking out. Little John was going, dude, I'm dying. And I'd go, here, eat this. You know, and so I'd go and unscrew my microphone in a bathroom stall and eat 2 or 3 power bars and suck down some water, and I'd be good. So you learn how they mentally and torture you.
It breaches the Geneva Convention.
Oh, dude,
they're literally putting you through POW stuff.
It's something else, man.
Now this is just more of a technical thing, but as an artist, I have to ask. Well, it's a union shoot, so they can't not feed you, right?
I guess that's true.
So if
it's SAG, I guess you could
go to
in
your
there.
SAG lawyer and say, they're not feeding
us on the
me,
show.
man.
I could have done that, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I'm not really a union type guy.
Well, I don't either, but I'll take him when I'm not eating.
I get your point. But yeah, so that was that was part of the mind game. You had to figure out how to adjust to these situations.
Wow.
And as I got down through it, Trump really didn't know who I was. John Rich, a country singer, right? He sings country music. I mean, he didn't know. But as we got towards the end, Trump, one thing I noticed about him is when you're in the boardroom and he's sitting over there and he's got everybody lined up over here. And when he's ready to talk, let's say you're on the show, he would go, so Brad Stine, how was that? And he'll lean in. He's great big, by the way. Trump's like 6'3", probably 260. I don't know how big he is. Big guy. He'll lean in. And every time he would do that to somebody, you would watch that person go, well, Mr. Trump, I mean, like he almost pushes them back. You can actually see him do that in interviews with people. It's something he does. It's a dominance thing.
Okay.
I said, okay, when he does that to me, I am not leaning back. So Trump, it's my turn, and he looks at me and he goes, "So John Rich, how was Gary Busey as your project manager?" And he's leaning way in.
Yeah.
And I will be honest, I felt like going,
Yeah, it's too much.
And so I leaned into him and I said, "Well, Mr. Trump, let me tell you, he's the nicest bunch of guys I've ever met in my life." And he goes, "It's quite a statement, Gary." And then he leaned back, "It's quite a statement, Gary. I think John Rich might be calling you crazy. I mean, maybe a little crazy." And at that point, I think Trump went, "Okay, this dude didn't. This dude leaned into me." Yeah. So that's when I think the first time we clicked was there. Since then, he's invited me to some interesting things, sitting down at these dinners with 10 or 12 people, senators and stuff, and then asked a question of me about a senator sitting across the table, which in this instance was Lindsey Graham, was sitting across from me, which the worst thing about that dinner is it took a week for me to get the sulfur smell out of my coat jacket.
Lord, I hope you
smelled
took
like
him
sulfur for a week. I'm like, God, what's this
I
smell?
hope you took him to the woodshed.
Oh, buddy. I mean, so I did.
Yeah.
Right in front of Trump, and Trump's got his arms crossed and that whole look like this.
Wow.
And he's watching it go down, and Lindsey Graham got more and more and more irate the longer I talked, and which I had great pleasure in smacking him around verbally at that table. But every time I see Trump now, he puts his arm on me. He goes, "John, that was the greatest takedown I've ever seen. Lindsey Graham, I've got to set up another dinner. I just got to watch it again." And I'm like, "Well, now that I know you liked it, I'll really say what I'm thinking." I was worried.
Bring out the big guns.
Yeah. So we've got a fun relationship kind of like that. But I think he likes having me around sometimes to ask my opinion on things because I'm not a politician. I don't work for him. I'm not on anybody's payroll. And I'm out here amongst all the people, and I grew up in a trailer park, and I have a high school diploma, and he knows all that. So he's like, "John, what do you think about the vaccine?" He asked me that at dinner. "Why do you think people boo me when I bring up the vaccine?"
And
back when he was bringing it up. He knows now because I told him.
What did you say?
I said
to his face.
I said, and keep in mind, I'm literally elbow to elbow. He's sitting here and I'm sitting here. And Herschel Walker's sitting over there. I mean, it's like, there's Lindsey Graham, and that was the table.
It's like a miniature bohemian group.
I'm like, why am I here? No, not with Trump.
Except for it's good people.
This was this was something. But he goes, I mean, I do these rallies and people, they're screaming and hollering. Everybody's all into it and, until I bring up the vaccine. And if I bring that up, they start booing me. Booing me?
Yeah.
Why are they booing me? But the whole table goes like this, like, oh, crap, okay. He just asked the big question. So I looked at that as an opportunity to tell him the truth about why they're booing you. So I said, "Mr. President, I'm going to tell you the straight answer on this." I said, number one, you were forced to trust people that we do not trust. You were in a position there. We don't trust Fauci, the CDC, the NIH, the FDA. We don't trust any of these people. We think they're a bunch of maniacs who want to depopulate half the earth. We think they are absolute,
It's all WEF stuff.
evil
legit,
entities. I said, but you're in a position where you had to trust them. Just understand, we don't trust them at all. And the whole table starts going, except for Lindsey Graham, the whole table starts going like this. I said, so you're talking to these big crowds. Everybody in that crowd, and if I was in the crowd, I would count myself in here. Everybody in that crowd has a family member or a friend or somebody they know that's either been really hurt by that or even died from it. So when you start touting, hey, we got this vaccine out here, everybody goes, yeah, thanks a lot, because that gave my sister myocarditis, or that gave my friend, my friend's face now doesn't work, or my uncle died. Yeah. We all have those stories now. Now it's 2024. We can all say, yeah, we all know people somewhere, if it's not you yourself, that's dealt with that. And he had his arms crossed and looked at me and said, that's really the truth of this matter? I went, that is why they're booing you. Wouldn't you boo somebody if that was your story? He goes, I probably would. I go, well, that's the answer. And he sat back in his chair like, he looks around, he goes, unbelievable, like nobody had ever told him this before. It was an honest reaction from him. Yeah. And I thought, well, why in the hell has nobody ever told him this?
Right.
Because everybody that's around him wants favor from him. And if he considers that to be one of his great achievements, which he did at that point, you're going to throw shade on the boss about what he's really proud of, something that he did.
But it makes me wonder about his
Think about that position I was in, man.
Oh,
That is like,
well, listen.
woo.
Well, listen, and it's why I do admire you, and I'm going to just say in that because we're on a podcast or whatever. We're kind of friends, and maybe we'll become better friends, but ultimately, that's less important to me than that you're courageous and you speak truth, because the truth tellers are missing.
Well, you're not serving him well to
No.
give him some BS answer.
No,
about it. He's asking me point blank.
It's a little disconcerting to me that he wouldn't have a little bit more savvy
This
looking at the lay of the land and going, okay, this didn't pan out.
This was almost 3 years ago.
Okay, so
So
it was
remember,
just
he
kind of
stopped.
just, I see.
From that dinner, he never brought it up ever again. And I think now he understands what happened. You know, Trump, for all his good points, he has a few bad ones. You know,
What are
he's
they?
got a big ego.
Yeah.
And so that's an Achilles heel with him. If you butter him up enough, he likes being talked to like that.
Yeah.
You know, so I think nobody around him that would tell him the hard stuff wouldn't, because they're afraid he might go, get this guy out of here.
Yeah.
What is your problem?
Yeah.
I don't ever want him in another
Right,
meeting.
right.
He could say that.
Of course.
He didn't say that about me. I thought he might, but I didn't really care, because this is a big question. This is the biggest question that he could have asked me at that
Yeah.
point.
But integrity wins out, even if it's just to honor God, which is you do. It's like, I don't care. You get to a point in your life where it's like, I don't have any time left to screw around. There is so much at stake in this nation and in this earth that if we aren't telling the truth, brother, what do we got left? You know, I don't know if there could be a more difficult job than being the president of the United States. And I will say this, you know, everybody's like, well, would he make a good president? Would this guy make it? And the answer is, who knows? Until you're the president, we don't know how good
Right.
you'll be, because it's a crazy job. But what you do have to do, like any CEO, because that's what you are, CEO of the United States, you got to bring in a crew to help you, because you don't know everything. So I need an administration. Who's the guy that's going to run the health issues? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Who's going to run the transportation? I'm not the FAA.
How do you figure that out?
How do you do any of this? So I'm hoping you all
Right.
are on my team. You have my ideology, but you're an expert in your field, so that I can be given the best information.
So he can delegate.
Yeah,
to
but
people,
ultimately, the buck stops there. Ultimately, he has
Yeah.
to say, pull the trigger. So the thing that has bothered me about him is, and the truth is, John, this is what's so horrific about what's happened to the world. I just don't know who to trust anymore. I don't know who to trust. Every time you think you found a guy that maybe this is the guy,
Yeah.
you don't know. But so I wanted,
I can tell you who to trust.
tell me.
Trust, okay. Do we agree that the systems of this world are evil? Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. The systems are evil. If the systems attack someone, that means that person is an enemy of evil. So if you find people, and there ain't many, that are constantly being attacked by the system, and they constantly go right back at them, and no matter how much damage they take, they continue to come, they will not back up, and the system does everything they can to destroy them, you can bet your ass that individual is not an evil individual. He is not part of what they are doing. So whether they are perfect or not, there's no such thing as a perfect person. But you can know that their intentions are right because the evil system hates them.
Yeah, and I think that's true.
You're known by your enemies,
Yes.
basically. That
and that is one of the things that I keep looking at is who hates this guy, because everybody that hates this guy, I am like way not a fan of. Like I'm going, wait a minute, you're evil. So if you
Right.
hate this guy, something is afoot here.
Well,
because-
including rhinos.
Yeah.
I mean, so now you got all these rhinos after he wins Super Tuesday going, I'm supporting Donald Trump now. I'll go, well, that was really brave of you after he locked up Super Tuesday. What a joke.
Okay, so
Mitch McConnell and
what do you know?
all these guys.
I mean, I've so given up on these despicable Republicans. Seriously.
Yeah.
They're the check and the balance.
Very few that
to
are
the
worth
demons,
anything.
and they've done nothing. So to me, I would rather
Right.
fight a demon, because I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
I know how to fight them. I know what their weaponry. Not Judas.
Yeah,
I thought you were on my side,
I
Judas.
don't call them rhinos. I call them Judas Republicans.
Judas, of course.
Yeah.
Because I said I will defend. When I give my vote, that's sacred. You're carrying my will to the Congress, representing my point of view, which you said you would do.
Right.
And then you did whatever you wanted. The antithesis of what I asked
Yeah.
you to do. So that's betrayal. That's Benedict Arnold. That is Judas. That is treasonous to an intellectual treason to what you promised you would do.
We've got those people in Tennessee right now running, not national politicians, state politicians. There's a guy right now named Farrell Hale. You ever heard of that guy? Okay, so he represents District 18. He's a senator. He's been there a long time. And Farrell Hale comes from the pharmacy side of things. So his biggest donors are Pfizer and Moderna and the pharmacist associations and all this stuff. And so he knows what he's talking about when he gets down to medicine. This guy authors a bill a couple of years ago that allows kids as young as 9 years old in Tennessee to receive puberty blockers. Okay. This is a Republican establishment guy, and he's got some kind of deal worked out with somebody somewhere, and he puts this bill forward and words it in such a way that he conned all the other Republicans into signing this thing. And now, of course, they backtracked and realized, what did you do to us? So there's a guy primarying him right now named Chris Spencer, who's never been a politician, who's just a really fierce dad. That's coming at this guy, and I'm backing him up. We're gonna try to knock a notch out of Farrell Hale and get him replaced.
Nice.
But again, that's what we have to do. What we said earlier, people can speak like you speak, look like you look, act like you act, support what you support, and they are absolutely not that. They are playing a game with you to try to get into a position of power where they can come around the back and stick you, which is what Farrell Hale did. So. People are starting to wake up to this, and it won't matter how much money you have behind you or how much influence. Once we, the people, understand who somebody is, I believe in 2024 they're going to turn on them and they're going to replace them.
So who is the real Donald Trump that you know? Who is he? Who is the actual? Obviously, he's got flaws. Like you said, as a Christian, we all have flaws. His is pretty blatant, but I'm thinking to myself, I'm a billionaire. I'm not a Christian. Yeah, I'm going to get laid as much as I possibly can, too. That's the fun of being a secular billionaire hedonist. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
Yeah.
So, I don't mean to be crude about it. I'm just saying.
I don't think he is that anymore. Actually.
No, I don't either. But what I'm getting at is that's what they're tarnishing him. Well, he said he grabbed the girl, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, because that's the world he lived in. He's in the 80s going to whatever disco places in the center. Of course he's going to live that world, but he's gotten older. Maybe I
think he might have gotten right.
He seems to care about America for legitimately our sovereignty. He seems to care about our freedoms. He cares about maintaining our traditions, our heritage, the Constitution. But here's the thing: none of us know. None of us, by far, the people watch around the world, but mainly U.S. I'm guessing none of us who are watching this right now have ever sat next to Donald Trump, talked to him, or got to know him on an intimate level. Now, you obviously only are allowed in so far. That's between you and him. And if there's stuff that is between you and him personal, that's yours. But we got an election coming up. I don't know if we can vote. That's another thing we have to overcome is how do we make sure this nonsense doesn't happen again? But let's pretend that they're so scrutinized this time that they can't pull off the steal. Like
or as he calls it, it's got to be too big to rig. There's so many people voting.
Well, and I agree. Well, it was last time. But we just didn't know the rig was coming. Now when the too big comes, I think it's going to be much more difficult. So now we're paying attention. But who is? And we trust you.
Okay.
You're a man of integrity. You're a Christ follower. You are a conservative. You are a patriot. You are courageous. And you stand for things that, no matter what it costs you, that is a rare man. You should be proud of yourself. Your father should be proud of what he's created in your
I appreciate that.
But we don't know, buddy.
Yep.
So all we got is you. Who's Donald Trump? Why should we vote for him? Or should we?
So I'll tell you a couple of things I've observed around him. One is on a fairly regular basis around him, people will come up and say, "Mr. President, can we pray for you?" And he always says, of course. He'll stop whatever he's doing, and he stops, and his eyes are closed and his head is down, and they got people putting their hands on his shoulders and grabbing
that's
his
not
hand.
Just politics.
No,
they play the game to these guys.
No, this is in back rooms where nobody's at yet before he walks out to speak or whatever. And he is deadly serious when that happens. He's always like, absolutely, please do. And then they do, and it is intense. And he is fully immersed in that situation. It's serious business to him. So that's a good sign. It wouldn't shock me that if some point in his past, maybe not that too distant, that he might have gotten right with God at some point. It would not shock me if that happened.
Why do you say that?
Knowing his history and how he was leading up to a certain point, and then this about face that seemed to happen. Repentance is not just stopping what you're doing. Repentance is turning around and going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Like repentance is like if you're driving down the road and you see Jesus standing on the side of the highway with his thumb out trying to get a ride, and you go, "Oh wow, that's Jesus. I'm going to pull over, of course, give Jesus a ride." And you pull over, and instead of Jesus getting into the passenger side, he walks around to your window and knocks on it, says, "Move over." And you go, "Okay," and you get in the passenger seat. Then he takes the car and he flips that sucker around and goes wherever it is he wants to take you. That's repentance. So ask yourself, would the Donald Trump of old given up billions of dollars worth of business that he had built? Would he have taken all this abuse? Would he have been impugned and maligned every waking second of his life, put his family in danger and everything else? Would he do all that if he was still the old Donald Trump? I don't think so. I don't think he would. I think...
Well, he's got nothing to gain.
No, it's all down. What you just said about me, I'm willing to take all these hits, and I've taken a ton of them. But you know what you're doing is what the boss wants you to do. So he hasn't ever told me that. Someday I'm going to ask him straight up if that's ever happened, and I hope to get the answer. But I think that could be the situation. One other story I've got: when I was doing Celebrity Apprentice, him and Melania walked onto an elevator that I was on. I was riding down, and they get on. I'm like, "Whoa, officer on deck, hello, sir."
Yeah.
He's like, "John, good to see you." We're on the elevator, and there's the little elevator attendant guy who's got his back to us, and he's punching the buttons. And Trump puts his hand on his shoulder and goes, "How you doing?" The guy goes, "I'm doing great, Mr. Trump." And he goes, "Do you like working here?" "Yes, sir, very much, sir." He goes, "Are people being nice to you?" "Yes, sir, everybody's very nice." He goes, "Well, you're doing a great job." And he slaps him on the back, and he pulls out a $100 bill and sticks it in his front pocket and walks up the elevator, slaps the guy on the back. There's just the three of us on the elevator at that point. So his heart for people, I think all the construction sites he's been around, and probably met some of the greatest people he's ever met working on construction sites. I think he really understands what regular everyday people are like. I think that's really probably down in him. If he wasn't him, he would probably be a construction manager or something, doing a regular blue-collar job. So
you trust his integrity, though. You trust.
Well, I'm around him when nobody else sees it. I have, when I have a phone call with him, it's just me and him talking, or a text message or something like that. And there's no game. He's not playing a game. That'd be an awful expensive game if this was a game for him.
Well, and there's like you said, he could have rode off into the sunset and just stayed the famous Trump guy that was in Celebrity Apprentice and on movies, and everybody loved him, and everybody loved him then.
Yeah.
Left, right, they all...
You ever stood in a room when somebody's praying for this, in the whole big room, and they're praying, and you ever look up for a second and see people just standing there looking straight ahead, and they don't have their eyes closed and stuff, don't have their heads bowed, none of that? Well, that's how you would probably think Trump would be like, "I'm not bowing my head to anyone. I'm not bowing to anyone or anything." Well, he definitely does. Yeah. He bows. His eyes are shut, and he is in submission at that point. So to see the most powerful guy in the world in a position of submission is quite a comment.
Wow. Well, listen, we're almost out of time. I appreciate it. There's one other thing I do have to ask you about, because I think it's really important. Those of us who watch Brad Stine Has Issues are part of the militia of the mind. That's a bunch of people who identify as believers, identify as Americans. And we try to get with different people in different groups that have the same values, care about the Constitution, care about the First Amendment, and sort of associate with those businesses and with those people and with those things, so that we have a militia of the mind, out thinking these people, out praying these people, out fighting these people, because we hope it never comes to bloodshed. We don't know. I was just in Gettysburg. There was a time when people had to lift up arms to keep a union secure. I hope it doesn't come to that. But in the meantime, you have to at least bankrupt into oblivion any business that promotes DEI or wokeism. They need to be destroyed so they understand what it is going to cost them now. So I got some good news. When I watched this, we had Heather Wilson on a while ago from Give, Send, Go, and of course they're being sued by the Canadian government for $300 million because they allowed the truckers to Canada to have money to defend themselves and protect themselves. And I then found that there were other banks, including Bank of America and whatever, that appeared could potentially be one of those who are saying, didn't like the way you voted, you just lost your money. Now, this is as difficult and evil as it's going to be. If you cannot find free speech platforms to house your money, to hold on, to give you legal advice if necessary, and religious liberty advice, which we have some folks on that are doing that, how to eat, how to be able to have commerce. It sounds crazy. This is where we're at, so buckle up. But there's also a new bank that I heard about. I was at Carol Swain, which has been on the program's conference she had, and John Rich was there with me and Larry Elder. Well, John had told me a while ago about a bank that he had created. Didn't know Larry was involved with that, but I guess he is.
And Ben Carson.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have got to know about this bank. So I want to give you a chance to talk about it as long as you want. What it is, what it stands for, and why people might want to think about putting their money there.
Well, I appreciate it. It's called Old Glory Bank. So oldglorybank.com is where you go to read about this thing. So it was right after that trucker strike happened, or trucker protest in Canada happened, and we saw Trudeau lean on all the banks and said, like you just said, freeze the bank accounts of these truckers and the trucking companies they work for and all the tow truck drivers and tow truck driver companies that refuse to tow the trucks. Freeze them all. So they did. And that's what eventually broke that whole thing up. We're watching that going, that is going to happen in America at some point. I mean, there are people right now salivating at the thought of freezing Brad Stine's bank account and John Rich's bank account and whoever else that they don't like what we have to say, and come up with a reason why that would happen. So Ben Carson, Larry Elder, myself, and a bunch of guys from the banking world that have run big banks before and stepped away from those banks because of the things you just talked about. They said, we've got to build a new platform of a bank where you cannot be canceled or be penalized just for exercising your constitutional rights. I said, 1,000%. Yes, can we build that? So we started building it. We came online about halfway through early last year, and now it is rolling into tens of thousands of accounts coming on every month, doing small business loans, things like that. And we look forward to the day when the federal government comes to Old Glory Bank and says, freeze this account. We cannot wait for that to happen because people have the misconception, Brad, that banks have to do what the federal government tells them to do. That is a farce. That is a lie. That's a myth. Banks are not owned by the federal government. Banks are owned by stockholders. They're privately owned. That's who owns banks. When the federal government comes to Bank of America and says, freeze Dinesh D'Souza's accounts, or Chase is who actually did that to him, that bank then has an option. They can say, yes, sir, you got it right away, sir, freeze. Or they can say, why do you want to freeze this person's bank account? Are they committing a crime with the money in this bank account? Because if that's the case, then yes, you would freeze an account if you're running drugs or doing something bad. And if they say, we don't like the fact that they went to this protest, we don't like this social media post, we think they could be a domestic terrorist, or we just don't like them, then the bank can say, well, you know what, we'll see you in court. We're not freezing anything. We'll see you in court. And then you go to court, and then you hash it out. That's what Old Glory Bank is all about. So there's lots and lots of people finding out about the bank, and thanks for bringing it up, because you're right. At the end of the day, if they freeze your accounts and you can't buy groceries, gas, or anything else, you're done. You're done, just like that.
Well, it's revelation. I mean, it's one world government. You always thought, well, how can they keep me from buying and selling? I don't get it. You know, it's like, how about if everything becomes electronic?
That's
and they just
central
say
bank digital currency.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why that's such an issue right now.
So there would be no, obviously, to folks who are have a 30-year relationship with Bank of America or whomever, Chase or whatever, and they were comfortable because they never thought this day would arrive. But here we sit, just like in Gettysburg. I don't think anybody thought when they were farming their field, are you going to go shoot your cousin? Oh, but here we were, and it's like either you take it seriously or you don't, because there is going to be repercussions. There's going to be a reckoning day. You either participated or you didn't, but you don't get to stop the momentum of what's happening in this nation. And the WEF and folks like that are literally controlling this nation and usurping our constitutional rights. But what they would want to know is, well, how? I mean, it's kind of a startup bank. Is it got insurance? How do I know you guys aren't going to eat it? And I put my money there, and next thing you know, you guys bankrupt. Right. I don't know enough about how that interest is key.
So again, I'd go to oldglorybank.com and read it through. But yeah, it's FDIC insured like every other bank. So your money's actually insured by the Fed. Yeah. And then some people,
could they say I'm not paying? Couldn't the Fed say, tough, you shouldn't have been with that bank?
No, again, it would be a court battle at that point. Yeah. You know, these banks that exist right now, they just lay down. Yeah. I mean, if the Fed tells them, if Joe Biden says do this, they just do it. And now we find out that Bank of America and a bunch of these other banks are combing through people's expense reports and credit card purses and going, are they shopping at Bass Pro or Dick's Sporting Goods? Or they want to know where you're shopping. And they, by the way, found out where a lot of people have been shopping. Now, why are they doing that? Well, we know why. They're putting them all on a list. Yeah. So Old Glory Bank does not participate in any of that. I mean, we are basically the bank that says, take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
Where are you located? Where's your?
So the physical bank is in Oklahoma, and we're looking at opening up a few more physical branches. But it's got a debit card, it's got a credit card, it's got you can do all the regular banking you would ever do at any other bank online. Yeah, you can do it all just like that. There's an Old Glory Bank app that we use, and it's we just moved into mortgages, so a lot of people are going, can you beat the interest rate over here?
God almighty.
And well, come on over and show it to us, you know. And so a lot of people are moving that. What I found is a lot of people coming to Old Glory Bank, they're not necessarily moving all their banking there. They're taking a lot of their cash and a lot of their backup emergency money and savings accounts and things like that. They're moving that to Old Glory Bank. So they may leave their mortgage where it is because they're locked in or whatever, but they're moving a lot of their liquid over to Old Glory Bank as a backup in case this goes down.
Well, and as a man of honor, you know, I would at least trust that you guys will do whatever is necessary if it ever came down to it, that the government decided to try to control you. Say, we'll die on this hill.
We can't wait for that.
We'll die on this hill.
Oh, we can't wait for that day. Can't wait. I mean, well,
this, but again, this is the peasants' revolt. We've been abandoned by D.C., but as long as there's Americans who care about doing the good and hard thing and have the courage to stand against the tide of where we are, and that's what we saw in the corona. People abandoning the First Amendment, abandoning their liberties, and it's like, that's bad enough. I guess if you're that weak and care that little about liberty and the sacrifices to get you here, I can't fix that. If that's all the lack of integrity you have, so be it. But I needed you to fight with me because I'm not giving that up. I need you to be part of this army. Oh, you don't care. So
that was quite a beta test, wasn't it?
My Lord, have mercy. And people that are still walking around with masks tell me that they really got into their emotional. These are people that had phobias and they tapped into, like a cult. Oh, yeah. Like a religious cult. They're wearing rabbit's foot and talismans and voodoo, basically.
Well, fear is powerful.
And it is, and they've shown. But we ain't going to fear no more.
Well, what does the Bible say about fear? It said God does not give us a spirit of fear.
Yeah, and perfect love.
If you have fear, which we all have fear at some point, you got to recognize that as, you didn't give me that, did you? No, I did not. Okay, well, can you get it out, take it off of me? Because I don't want to walk around afraid of this stuff.
Well, I mean, you know, you're right. And that's why I said we got to return to God. I don't care if you believe in God, you better start, because you're going to meet him quick and soon, but you want to be on his side. Well, I'm going to have just a quick subscription question that only the subscribers will get to see just quickly, because I know your time's valuable. Just quickly tell me, what was the most personal song you ever wrote, the one that meant the most to you when you finished it and said, that told the story I wanted to tell?
A song called My Son. So I have 2 boys, 12 and 14, Cash and Colt. One's named after Johnny Cash, one after Sam Colt. So I call them Guns and Money sometimes as a joke. But, you know, that's my number one job, is being their dad. I get asked, John, are you going to run for politics? You ought to run for governor of Tennessee. You ought to do it. I said, man, I don't know what I may do in the future, but right now I'm these 2 guys' dad. That's my whole job. When they walk into this buzzsaw called the world, I want them to be as prepared as they possibly can. So no thank you to any of this other stuff right now. But I thought to myself, I was out on the road, and you know, I think a tour bus had a wreck and killed a bunch of people, and I thought, man, that could happen any time. And if that happened to me, if I was just all of a sudden gone, what would I want my sons to hear from me as the final thing they ever heard? Can I get it into a song? And so I wrote this song called My Son, My Son. And if you go look up My Son, John Rich, you'll find that song. But it's basically a letter to my boys. It's about what I feel about them, how important they are, how I hope their future is, what I hope they always hang on to, how they walk, how they get through their life and all that. So of all the songs I've written, that's probably my favorite and the most important family-wise to me, because that's everything. I will tell you, though, there's one coming out here in about 6 weeks called Revelation. And I will send it to you. I'll send it to your phone. You'll be one of the only people that's heard it. This song is not only unlike anything I've ever written, it's unlike anything anybody has written. And that's quite a statement.
Yeah.
But I have gone online and tried to find this subject written. I can't, not a Christian artist, not a country artist, nobody anywhere has written this exact song. And Brad, it is the most bone-crushing, rattling song you have ever heard in your life, and completely true. It is a song about how Christians are going to, what we're about to walk into, and what happens to the wicked. Because the whole thing's laid out. It says how they end. It says they end in fire, brimstone, and total destruction at the end of the day. And the song talks about that. Like, by the way, you guys have a good time out here having your seances on the Super Bowl stage or at the Grammys, because the clock's ticking on you. And when the boss puts his foot back down on the ground on this planet, you're done.
Yeah.
That's what the song talks about.
Wow.
And it is something else. I'll send it to you.
Well, and maybe once
man.
it released,
I'll come talk
we'll
about
play
it.
it on.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd love to because you've written other songs like that. I remember with the J6 singing.
Yeah, right.
Star Singing Banter. I believe
Yeah,
that was like, it was almost like
songs
like
are important.
Yeah.
What we talked about earlier about all these big giant pop stars and people doing all this satanic crap on stage in their music, and why are they doing that? And I said, because they talk to more people than anybody, because it's music and everybody likes music. So the bad guys infiltrate them. Well, the ones of us that are not a part of that, but we can still write and we can still sing and perform, and we really know how to craft a great song and put it out there. It is our job. It is our responsibility to try to combat what they're doing. Now, good luck ever knocking them down. They're so big. But that doesn't mean you still don't come at them with everything you got.
Yes, absolutely. And God created music, and he created that ability to touch us. Music does something that nothing else does. You can watch a dramatic movie, you can read a dramatic novel. They all have beautiful ways of moving you, but something about music is one of a kind.
It goes right.
Something's different.
That's probably the most limitless thing God ever created was music.
That's it.
It's totally
and you don't
limitless.
need to speak the language.
No.
Just the melody is enough, or the rhythm is enough, or the vibe of the style of instrumentation.
Yeah.
Touches your soul. Is there something about it that God made?
Lucifer.
Oh,
yeah, right.
What is the singer? Right? It's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably why he likes the music industry so much.
Right.
He's like,
I've done this.
I'll get you a record deal. I know a guy.
I know.
Yeah.
I am the guy.
Hey, there's one last thing I want to say before we go.
Please.
So, leading up to this song Revelation coming out in a few weeks, I have sat with my dad, who's been preaching since he was 19, and he's gone back. He's 73. He's gone back throughout his life and looked up every scripture that you can think of in the original languages. So Chaldean if it's Daniel, Hebrew if it's anything from the disciples, the Greek when Paul was writing and it went into Greek. And it's interesting because the King James Version of the Bible, when the Brits looked at those old languages and then turned them into what we have now as our English Bible, some of those things are off by a couple of words, or the original words meaning when it was in Greek, Hebrew, or Chaldean, the way it translates to English doesn't mean the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in that when you figure it out. So leading up to releasing the song Revelation, I told my dad, we need to sit down and record short conversations on various subjects in the Bible that everybody is trying to figure out and trying to study, and lay it out in the original languages and what did John actually mean when he was writing Revelation and said that? What did he mean by that? And so he goes, you got it. So I've recorded all these things. I loaded them up last week. It's on YouTube, on John Rich Music. There's 4 of them. And on Rumble, it's John Rich Official. There's all 4 of them right there.
These are the conversations.
These are the recorded conversations between me and my dad. And you can sit there and follow along, pull your Bible out and go, yep, that's what it says, and try to bring some clarity, because I think where we're heading into right now, I don't know if it's the final thing, but it's definitely headed
Last
that
chapter.
direction.
Last
Well, a
chapter.
lot of the things in the Bible that even my dad preached for all those years, he said up until the advent of the internet, a lot of it was just completely impossible. You couldn't
Yeah.
even understand how that could happen.
That's right.
But he says with the advances in tech
That's
and the
right.
way we are in 2024, a lot of the things that they prophesied about are now completely possible, and we use them every single
That's
day
right. That's
now.
right.
So it's really interesting stuff
Yeah.
if you're looking to dig into some of these
Absolutely.
subjects.
Well, we definitely do. We'll do that, and obviously you're welcome on anytime you want to promote something or whatever, because we need you. We need warriors like you. I hope I'm doing my little part as a comic.
You're doing great.
Well, thanks, but I don't know Donald Trump, so
Well, we can work on that.
We can work on
You should open up one of his rallies or
I
something,
should.
man. That'd
I'd
be
love
so
to. Are
good.
you kidding me? Well, folks,
Yeah.
this is John Rich. He is a true warrior. He is one of the original militia of the mind. He came on this show before I was even close to being anything. That's the kind of integrity he does. It's not about numbers to him. He just hangs with folks that he thinks are like-minded and are fighting for the truth. And that's really where we're at. We, as Christians especially, are the last truth tellers on earth. We are the last ones that understand the compass, how to get back home. So I don't know if we're going to get there. I don't know what's going to happen in America. I don't know what this election is going to be like. None of us do, but you are supposed to go down swinging. You are supposed to be fully loaded and ready to fight, because that is what a Christian is. We defend against injustice, against lies, and that is really the only enemy you'll ever have. Truth and lies. Jesus is truth. Satan is lies. Folks, remember, if they ever say to you, hey, you're being politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment, because nothing is more important to the enemy than mocking his lunacy, which is wokies. And folks, I'm just a comic, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which is what? Putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.